Welcome to the first Teflon Tales of 2021. With me, I have a personality of a kind that I have not hosted before, Quincy Amarikwa. Welcome, Quincy.
Thanks for having me. I like that. That's a very unique introduction.
I'm going to prove that to you and the audience, right? Which is 12-year MLS USL Pro, founder and director of strategic partnerships of Black Players for Change, host of the weekly Ask a Soccer Pro show over Instagram, mental strength coach, president Leverage Investment Group, dot, 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 right? So that in a nutshell is really what all Teflon Tales is about, right? Which is showcasing people who are living the Teflon life, which is, hey, how do you get hot quickly on a number of different things, stay balanced, be flexible, cool down when you need to really, really quickly, and be non-sticky. So, Quincy, let me start with it's hard enough being a soccer player and do be very, very good at what you do, right? And I just rattled off many different things. So talk a little bit about how you expanded beyond being a top-notch soccer player into so many different things, specifically down the paths of the mental strength league and then the Black Players for Change.
Okay, and I'm getting better at condensing down hopefully 33 years of experience into bite-sized chunks, consumable content, right?
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
I'd say I guess the best way to think about it is I'm an entrepreneur who happens to play professional soccer, right?
Hmm.
When I came into the soccer space, um, I I came in playing because I just loved the game and I enjoyed it. I didn't watch it on TV. I didn't have a favorite team or a favorite player. Um, I didn't follow soccer. What I did was I showed up and I played because I enjoyed it and I loved it. And um, the approach that I take and took with the game is what eventually led to college becoming an option and pro becoming an option.
Hmm.
And uh, for better and worse, my mentality and how I approached and came into the soccer world, became my greatest strength as well as my greatest weakness, and that was my mentality, right? And the focus was really trying to figure out why I didn't get it,
Hmm.
right? So it's funny. I'm working on developing the idea for my show, and the name of the show will be Quincy doesn't get it, and the
Hey, that's going to be a hit just by the name itself.
okay, so Quincy doesn't get it, and that's kind of what it was. It was like there was something I didn't get and I didn't understand when I came into the soccer space, and I was focused and dedicated to figuring out what that was. And I didn't care how long it was going to take or what it was I was going to have to do or learn. I'm going to get it eventually.
Yeah.
That's a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, doesn't matter. It's a foregone conclusion. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And to remain dedicated and committed to that idea or that concept, you have to have you have to develop a strong mentality. You don't have to start with one, but you have to be committed to developing one over time. And I think that's why it kind of resonates a lot with the Teflon tales, right? And I I'm sure we can get into the many different ways in which I didn't get stuff and what I was getting wrong and why, which, to me is funny. To some is and isn't funny. There's the ups and downs of a career, but um, those lessons I learned from not getting it, but getting it eventually, is a unique perspective of experience that I think many people don't necessarily earn over time, because it's really hard, and it doesn't have to be, but I was someone that learns best the hard way, and as I learn uh, the hard way, I realize how valuable it is and how difficult it was, and my goal is to break it down so that someone else who is kind of like me, who has to learn the hard way or the tough way, or someone who's too scared to get started or doesn't know what to do, has a very as accurate a blueprint as possible
Yeah.
to condense those time frames.
So Quincy, I need to so just before we hit go live, you were saying something which just like stuck in my head because that is epitomizing Teflon tails, right? Which is, I asked you a question, hey, are you in the market? And you said you're a free agent, right? But that's not all what you said, right?
Uh,
You are trying to be as valuable as possible, not just playing soccer, right? But whether it's a player coach, it's a coach. You mentioned construction. So, and the whole idea was you don't know what is going to be valuable at what point in time, right? So you're just building asset base so that if and when a certain vertical inside the soccer industry starts to pick up, you're already there. So, and that's something that is so hard for people to do, right? And again, you're talking about getting good at something, and people spend their time just getting good at one thing. Hey, I can barely do one thing right, and here, like, we're talking about having to do multiple things. So how do you get over that mental barrier that we place on ourselves, saying, hey, I need to do one thing and do one thing well, versus saying, hey, you got to do number of different things, not knowing which one is actually going to
okay,
lead for the best.
I follow you. Okay, so I spent a long time thinking about a solution to that problem, as well as how do you apply that solution, and how do you make it easy for people to understand, as well as valuable valuable enough for them to want to implement or try for themselves, right? And that's what I've coined and brand as the Amarikwa process. But more specifically, the first three steps of that process is the three S's of self-awareness, right? And the self-awareness is crucial to the process, and developing self-awareness and maintaining self-awareness and practicing self-awareness is critical to maintaining success over a long duration of time, right? If not, to the point that you just said, like, you'll get good at something even if what you're good at is nothing, and at some point in time that will become popular, and
Yeah.
and you might be able to profit off of that for that moment in time, but once that time is gone, it's over. And most people have probably become more aware of professional athlete stories of they were making millions and millions of dollars at the height of their career. Everything was in their fingertips, and then all of a sudden, 2 to 3, 5 years after their career is done, they're bankrupt and they don't know what happened, right? So on a micro scale for individuals, that same story plays out, just not in the millions of dollars. Maybe it's the hundreds of dollars, the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands. And being self-aware enough to understand that and use that as your frame of reference to keep yourself in balance and in check is the key. Okay.
Mm.
So with that context, it's really saying, well, how do you do it, and what's most important? And if you can only focus on one thing, what's the most valuable thing? And to me, your mentality is the most important thing, because everything else is a manifestation of your mentality. Positive, negative, short-term, long-term, it's all rooted and starts in your mind. So everything you've seen in the world, and everything that's outside of your awareness right now, started in someone's mind at some point in time. So that's where I got to eventually, after lots and lots of thinking, contemplation, and a lot of tough lessons. And then I spent my time developing and walking through how to do that. And that's how you do it. That's what's most important. I've got a talk going through that, but that's hopefully the 2-minute pitch on that.
So I'm going to pivot to how you and I met, right?
Mhm.
And common connection, Christina, partner. Christina and I go back, I don't know, 3 years, and we're really, really good friends. And she's mentioned your name not once, not twice, but every time we talk, hey, I need to connect you with Quincy.
Uh-huh.
And the way she connected with you is because of her son, who was following your weekly podcast, Ask a Soccer Pro, on Insta, right? And he used to keep telling her, and your name used to come up, and she's like, "Oh, I need to go listen to it." And something triggered, and I still remember this, like a half-hour call with you ended up being a 2-hour call. So, talk a little bit about why that discipline of why you started Ask a Soccer Pro to begin with, right? And the kinds of audience and following you have gathered as a result of that. But also, the thing that caught my attention as I was doing some research for this dialogue is the consistency. It's not just, and these days everybody is on Zoom and a recording comes out, everybody can send a movie or MP4, but that's not it, right? I mean, yours is takeaways for every podcast, right? So there is value that you're providing every single week. And again, for me, that is consistency, it's discipline, but also making sure that the listeners can come away with something. And there's a pretty much a quote pretty much for every podcast that you have, right? So
Hmm.
why did you start that? What has been the measure of success for you for that, and the impact it's had on many lives?
Ooh, okay, let's break down that question because it's multi-layered, right?
Yeah.
uh, my approach of communication style is speaking to everyone all at once. So I
Hey,
think,
so I need to show our common friend is over here. Hey, Christina,
hey, what's up?
you're the
Welcome.
reason we connected. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, specific to your question. Um, the reason why I started sorry, you're helping me better articulate the idea,
Yeah,
because the idea for why I started and why I did it, and my understanding of the approach and if it was effective, is is understood differently by me, the Quincy you see in front of you today, than the Quincy who started out, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So so when I'm initiating it or starting, I understand that I've come to some type of understanding that I believe can be extremely valuable to the world, right?
Mhm.
I think of it more like a mentality software upgrade. Like the world has been running on old OS
Yeah.
system for a long time, right? And uh, and we're in need of a mental software upgrade because fundamentally we're all human, right? So um, we might have varying degrees of intelligence, perspective, cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds. Uh, all of those things are true, and there's many variables. But the one thing that at least I understand at this point in time in my existence as a human is that there is that common thread between all of us, right?
Mhm.
And for me, I'm thinking of it in terms of we all have the same, or we've all at least agreed that we have the same number of hours in a day, right?
Mhm.
How productive we can be in that hour, or those hours, is also relative. So everything is relative. If I'm breaking down my communication style, it's it's how can you communicate to everyone at the same time,
Mhm.
and approaching your conversation in that manner allows you to hit every level at some point in time in your conversation or in your talk, right? So the real goal is then saying, given enough consistency over time, you'll have invested enough time speaking to the frequency of every single level and demographic of audience. But what's most important is every message on every frequency and every level ties back to the same fundamental principle and understanding. So you might have a different level or perspective of understanding at 33 than you did at 3, than you did at 13, right? But there's still fundamental truths that are consistent throughout that timeline. So I'm saying that to say that was the idea at the time, but I did not yet have the experience and the communication skills to adequately convey that idea through words, then. So there was other skill sets and other conversations and other experiences I needed to have first before I could get to a point like this at this point in time with you and have this conversation and exchange these types of ideas. So that was the idea behind the Ask a Soccer Pro show and the Mental Strength League. Um, Understanding how people, you know, have a subconscious bias that uh, already leans them to put you in a certain box due to who they believe you to be before you step into the room. So yes, that was the reason for the show. That's the reason for the consistency. And I appreciate the opportunity to even like share these thoughts and ideas because
Yeah,
yeah.
so Quincy, you mentioned something which I think is not only profound, I think it is fundamentally life changing if you understand it. And I'm with you every step of the way because even the whole Teflon Tales, right? This is episode 17 or 18, right?
Mm.
What I know now of this was not what I knew when I started this 6 months ago.
Mhm.
And in this world where it's all about return on investment, right? Everything is measured of ROI. And b- whether it's social media or not, I don't know, but there is a shortened, increasingly shortened time span for measuring ROI.
Yes.
And what you and I are talking about over here is you're you can't define the outcome because you started putting the effort in. You will have to pivot along the way. But what you're talking about is, hey, looking back, you could now see how this has impacted lives. But if you were to put down an ROI, okay, what's it going to look like 6 weeks from now? You would have probably stopped it. I would have probably stopped it, right? So how does somebody get over this, like what you said, which is people have a definition of who you are, and they're going to pressurize you, and then you have your own self-critic, the imposter syndrome of, okay, is this even worth it, right? So it's again back to that whole Teflon thing, which is you want to stay detached and yet you want to get hard, but give it enough energy and impetus so that you can actually measure it meaningfully.
Okay. No. I'm thinking of if you think of it, and by it I mean the human experience, in the context of a process, as opposed to the many ways that everybody can think about it, because we're all our own individuals and stuff. I understand that. You say, from the context of me speaking to you here right now, right? I can know that you understand where I'm coming from, but I also have to speak to the person who might stumble across this, but who might not understand where we come from, be willing to understand where we come from, like how you look as a person, like how I look as a person, how I sound. There can be so many reasons why they look at what they're seeing in this moment and dismiss us and dismiss this and dismiss what it could bring to them, that they can be denying themselves the very thing that they've been seeking and searching for in life, right? So I say that to set context for then what I'm going to say in terms of, in terms of, sorry, that was a brand new thought and idea, so I ran away with it. Let me get back to the question, which was,
So the idea of like what you said, which is the Quincy of today is able to articulate effectively what the podcast is bringing over many episodes, versus the Quincy, if I'd asked you the same question when you started this off, it would have been very different. So the point being, how do you maintain the consistent discipline to get to a point of looking back, and like you said, you and I are operating at a certain frequency, and somebody coming in could, like you said, dismiss us, but then that same individual 3 months down the road, when they listen to the episode again, maybe it just hits them like that, right? So as a producer, as a person who knows what value you think you can bring, to be able to stay disciplined knowing that the audience will get there as long as the intention and the purpose is known.
got you. Okay, no, and I understand. And okay, so on multiple levels, what I just went through right now was processing new data and information that's being relayed from you in this moment, right? Which also, I got lost in my own world and idea, right? And in this moment, I'm receiving feedback to confirm whether or not my idea was accurate, or if I needed to pivot or change, right? Because where I am in my understanding relative to your understanding, and the speed at which you can learn versus the speed at which I had to learn, is different,
Yeah.
right? So for instance, okay, because I want to answer your question specifically, but also share that coming to this understanding also is a process. And when I was expressing setting context for how we're going to discuss this as, okay, life is a process.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can come to that agreement, then we can kind of break it down into, let's say, life is step 1 to step 100, right? And the time it takes you to get from 1 to 10, the time it takes you to get from 1 to 10 might take me 5 times longer.
Yeah.
But we can both get to 10.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter of, do you have enough time to get to 10 relative to the people next to you, right?
Right.
And most people give up because they see other people getting there or perceived getting there before them.
Yeah.
But if you understand that life is a process and you will get there eventually if you stay committed and dedicated to doing it long enough, then you'll get through those tough times. And you can hopefully even see in this moment, that's me reminding myself of that here in this moment in the conversation with you, right? Because even with you sharing with me, I can see that you learned a lot of this stuff much more quickly than I did. So I could look at that as me being at a disadvantage right now, and I did all this work and now, but if the reason you did something was for a purpose bigger than yourself, that should encourage you, not discourage you. And it's very difficult to be able to show people what that looks like because these are the things that happen in the moment in real time. And what I learned and realized is that in this digital space, we're losing out on a lot of valuable analog experience.
Yeah.
So I try to do my best to at least set context and lay foundation for my analog brain of thinking through the digital age that we're living in, right? Because there is value in analog. For as fast as we can learn and as fast as we can go, there's pros and cons to both, and there's values in both systems. And I feel, and I think we talked about it before, I just look at myself as kind of an interpreter between ideologies, generations, understandings, and it's a practitioner of what I preach because I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to myself, and if other people find value in it, okay, cool. And if not, that's cool too.
Hey, so Quincy, I'm going to. So one of the challenges, again, living the Teflon life is like looking at your profile, right? I mean, people love it. Oh, he's a MLS. No, it's like MLS is one of 20 different avatars that you have. Is you mentioned a few things. Number one, you have to be trying different things. Number two, you have to be doing them consistently over time. Number three, life is a process, so therefore don't compare yourself with others. They might be at step 7, you might be at step 2, but we're all going to get to step 10 eventually, right? One of the challenges with having to kind of multiplex and do so many things is burnout, right? Especially now with people, there's less social interaction. You mentioned analog. You and I don't know when we're going to have an analog meeting. It's probably going to be digital for a while. Christina, our common friend, I haven't met ever, and it's only been digital so far. So the point is, how do you maintain sanity while trying to get through these 10 steps, especially like you said, somebody else at step 7, I'm at step 2. Man, I need to hurry up, right? Versus slow it down, be mindful of yourself. And you mentioned self-awareness, right? How does that become part of one's psyche?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question, but as most people know, questions don't just come directly. They aren't just direct with me because we live in the gray, right? But we're built up of analog, ones and zeros, just binary, right?
Yeah.
Ones and zeros. So okay, so one is you can't keep your sanity, right? Like so me conveying this idea. So this is my first attempt at conveying this idea, articulating in words. Sanity is a relative term. Mm-hmm. Same to who? Same to whose standard? Same to what? And is what you're tying it to what someone told you, what you read in a book? Like, okay, who wrote that book? Yeah. And who made them the authority on what it was that they're writing? And why? What was their agenda and reason for writing that in the book in the first place? Was it to just be a lead gen to sell you something 3 years from now? So let's back up into historical context. We all know cigarettes are bad for you. Tobacco is nicotine is addictive, right? There's known carcinogens put into cigarettes, yet they're still legal and available because people have the right to smoke them if they want to. so long as they have an understanding of what the potential consequences are. You might be the one in a billion who none of that stuff affects. You don't get cancer and you don't die. And okay, if that's you and you want to smoke and it works for you, no problem. But we have to come to at least a common consensus of understanding and agreement of giving people equal access to accurate information and allow them to come to their own conclusion, right? As opposed to what it was when we're looking at this, there used to be a time where doctors were on TV promoting certain brands of cigarettes because it's healthy and it's good for them. So there was someone who did a study at that time because they were funded by the tobacco industry to write papers to publish them so that they could advertise to youth and people to do that. So like that existed, that was a system, that was a thing, and that was seen as common, sane, good. Yet enough time and enough distance and enough education and ability and access to information to educate, we can now become knowledgeable of that on our own if we choose to, and then have conversations about it like we're having here right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of sanity, and that's why I said that's insanity. Sanity is a very complex idea because the answer is completely contingent upon what you tie to being sane or insane. What's crazy? What's normal? What's your normal? What's someone else's normal? And you'd also made another point when you said, don't compare yourself to others.
Yeah.
I'm saying compare yourself to others, but understand why you're doing it. If you understand you're comparing yourself to others because you're a selfish, jealous person, but you know that, you're self-awareness. You're self-aware and you know that about yourself and you're being honest. So the 3 S's of self-awareness are self-honesty, self-initiative, self-accountability. I'm not going to tell you what life you need to live. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, here's the data. Here's how we understand it. This is what we have access to right now. You're your own autonomous human being. Do your own research. If you don't know how, learn how to do your own research. If you don't have access to learning how to do that, that should be a governmental program that makes sure people learn those basic skill sets, right? But to deny that everyone has equal access to opportunity, everyone has equal access to, experiences and networks and all that, the people who stand on that mountain and shout from those rooftops are essentially, whether they know it or not, are like the doctor who did the research to substantiate that tobacco. You're seeking information to just validate your own bias to maintain your system because you're in a position of advantage over other people.
Correct.
So don't be afraid to be insane.
Mm-hmm.
That usually means you're onto something. Yeah, everyone said I was crazy. Everyone said I was dumb. Everyone said I didn't know what I was doing. Everyone said I'm just an athlete. You're just this. It's not your skin. It's not your this. They'll tell you all these things that it's not, but they won't tell you what it is. That's why I say Quincy doesn't get it until you get it. And once you get it and you figure it out, you go, seriously? This is it. Yeah. So that's what I learned. Kind of the Wizard of Oz at the end of it, pull it back. Oh, okay. But once you understand and know that, are you going to be the type of individual who's bitter and angry and mad about that, so you do to others what was done to you? Or are you going to update and improve the system so those negative experiences don't have to be a part of the system? And hopefully that answers, because insane, I won't say,
Yeah, no, I think you put such an important perspective on that of being, the honesty, initiative and accountability just changes the dynamics, right? Because you're right. Until you get to a point where there's a uniform standard for everybody, but even that, people are at different points, right? Every single person is coming from a different position of strength or weakness, and being able to understand that. So, Quincy, I always knew this was going to be a very, very intriguing. At the same time, I know we're going to challenge each other as we go through the thought process, and hopefully, like you said, there are some people who are able to absorb it right now. There's some people who dismiss us, and others who say, "Hey, maybe this is interesting. I'll come back to it later." And all three are, like we said, those 10 steps, and people are in their different process in life. So, thank you for your time, and stay safe. And one day we're going to have that analog meeting.
Of course, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Bye-bye.